Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CulturWe podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how the idea of the podcast started, a bit about ourselves, and how we got to know each other. Thank you for listening.
The podcast was inspired because I think of, for me, when we would sit around the lunch table with all of our colleagues, classmates.
Or insane group of friends, yes.
Exactly, from all over the world, and have these like really beautiful, in-depth conversations that I wasn't getting back home, and I don't think anyone does because we're in an academic setting, so that you're inspired to talk about really deep subjects and get a better understanding and ask questions. And I think a lot of times people, and I know I'm guilty of it, will be like, what is this, conflict or issue going on? And then you Google and you get the really 5-second answer and it doesn't give you anything.
Yeah,
It doesn't give you the background. And for me, I think it's really important for my historical research to understand, how did we get here? What are the steps? What are the weird butterfly effects that have led to this moment? And that might be 200 years ago, but it's very pertinent to whatever's going on right now. And so I think, it was just really lovely and inspiring to sit around a lunch table and, of course, cause chaos.
We were pure chaos. But definitely, it was still so beautiful that usually you get such a narrow perspective of things usually, but being in such a diverse group of friends, you honestly got you could hear any kind of perspective, any kind of view on things, and it just opened you up even more to new things, and it was really beautiful.
I miss it.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean,
so then we started this.
I don't know, the podcast, did I have a choice?
I mean, I didn't let you, so.
Did I have a choice?
Have you ever had a choice with
I think 2 a.m. I got a message, and you guys were like,
Australia.
We're making something. We're doing something. We're starting something. You are part of it. And I was like, 2 a.m. I was like, I couldn't even open my eyes. And I was like, what? I was like,
I love that's exactly what I said to Shaylee while I was texting you. I was like, I'm gonna text Sarah, and she doesn't really have a choice. And she's like, great.
Yeah. But I was like, ooh, I mean, but I don't know what this is.
We don't either.
We still don't know. Yeah.
I mean, but then again, in every conversation, we have lunch stories and everything that we talk about, and the debates. Did I really have a choice? I don't think so.
No.
It was just it just started. Somebody started it. It was never me, I think. I don't want to say it's never me. But I did have opinions, some of them.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's where you start. And then you just continue building from there.
No, but you guys are definitely one of the people that really make me comfortable to talk about things.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my pitch for me.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Now I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm the old one.
Okay. Let's discuss our age.
Oh God.
The old American who's from very rural America, rural area, which I think is a common thing across all countries. Obviously, you have these rural and urban divides, and so hopefully I can add that kind of perspective to things, where I don't understand living in a giant city of Stockholm or Seoul, but I enjoy cities. But the rural, I think, gives it's like a little microcosm of what you find in cities in bigger pockets. But it's such a fascinating kind of way to live and exist with people, because it is so old and historic, because we all used to live in small places over time. And I think of when Sarah and I would have conversations about the last names in Korea. And you know that if you have that last name, you're coming from the exact same place and the exact same area, and you're all related in some form or fashion. And granted, a lot of people are related in rural areas, but and I have to leave for that reason. But I'm hoping, wherever I end up, to add a little bit of the Western perspective of American West, not just the global Western perspective. Because I think having conversations with you about Baptist church camp and learning how to shoot a gun.
Yeah.
That was fun stuff. That was fun.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest ball of twine, the biggest check egg, the biggest jackalope. Like, there's just silly things that we do that are so, they're community driven, that
Yeah,
look crazy on the outside, but they're such
they
a
do.
part of our culture. And so, coming from
Yeah.
anthropology and museums and now cultural heritage and sustainability, hopefully, I know that my perspective on the world and culture and how we interact with each other has changed and evolved over time. I think that's a really healthy way to live. If we're not evolving, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
Uh, and I think whether you're rural or urban, you can get stuck in that mindset of I know what I know, and I know I'm right, and have this like weird echo chamber. And so I think coming to school in Sweden, that was really the part of it. I wanted to not be in an echo chamber anymore. I wanted to be surrounded by people who had different perspectives than me. Um, and so I don't know if any of
Yeah.
that made sense,
No,
but
it
No,
did.
no,
It
it
did.
does.
I'm excited for it. And being an adopted kid, I think it was Sarah and I that we were chatting, and um, when I did my interview for my thesis, and being adopted and having to figure out where you fit in the world within your own world of knowing your heritage on one side and then introducing this other piece of your heritage is really fascinating, and building identity is really important, and it's an ever evolving process. So we'll see what happens.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my experience. Like your experience in Sweden was very much my experience when I went to US for university. Because I
Mm.
mean, I've lived in other countries even before I went to America, but America is such a diverse country with so many cultures. And it's not like in other countries, you know, there are other cultures in the country, but you never really interact with them. But in
Mm.
America, you're kind of forced to.
Yeah.
And when I went there, it was I think it was like a year after Trump was elected.
Mhm.
Oof.
Because yeah,
Mhm.
and the whole politic side of America was so much crazier
Mm.
than it was.
Yeah.
I mean, from my knowledge,
Yeah.
that was like mind blowing. And when I went to America, that experience of, oh, I'm really being forced to think about my race and other races and other cultures and
Mm.
minorities, and that because it used to be just me versus the world. Before America, it was Poland. That was the longest country that I lived in, which was I was
Mm.
there for 3 years, and I felt really different. I could feel the difference with my race before
Mm.
any other, because other ones in Peru, obviously I did feel it, but it was I had enough people in my school that were from Korea, but in Poland it was just me and my brother, nobody else in the entire school. It was just us. And
Yeah.
that really, and my brother is a bit more, he's got that blessing with the people that he has more friends always, and I'm the
More social.
shy
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I struggle with it, and that really forced me to always be like, oh, I'm really different no matter how much I try. I mean, my friends were great, I learned a lot, but it's still that difference. But in America, they were like, oh, I have this huge group, the
Mm.
community of Korean Americans, that created this base for me to experience the world in a different way. And I can just learn about these things from their experience. And
Yeah.
that
You're
was
part of a
great. And I
whole.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that really, so from that year, I think was a time that I really started thinking about culture
Mhm.
in relation to other people's culture. Because it used to be
Yeah.
just me and my culture and trying to figure out who I am and all those things. And now it's like, oh, it's not just me. There's so many other people, and it's us that we just have to figure out what to do with us. And that
Yeah.
really expanded everything, just like you were talking, that everything really, that small, it's a very small experience. You don't really notice it until you're talking about it, that it's like, oh, there are so many influences that from that one experience. I was in America for 4 years, but still it was crazy influence compared to any other countries. And then obviously I came to Sweden, and it was another experience that because that was the first time that I was away from my family, yet I was close enough to my parents.
Mm.
That was a huge change for me, because
Yeah.
usually it's just me and my brother, and then my parents, or all of us and then away from everyone else. But now it's just, it's a weird thing that I'm like, I can be independent, yet I can depend on my parents. It's a nice balance that I could learn. But it definitely helped me with figuring out my identity, which is one of the things I love to talk about and love to focus on. And then, well, with going to Australia, huge change. Loved it. I mean, you guys know how much I loved it.
Yeah.
And that was really the first time ever in 12 years of being in another country other than Korea in half of my life. That was the first time I felt, and I was only there for 6 months, and that was the first time I felt, oh, this could be my home. And that really was, that was so relaxing through any other experiences I've had in Australia, in Melbourne specifically, with other, I had friends that were Korean. I had other like friend from Hong Kong, friend from Europe, all different. And that really gave me a chance to be like, oh, I don't have to stick to my Korean identity that I usually find from church communities. I can find this everywhere else. And these people that I find in other places, they also feel just like me. And we can connect through this without being, without neglecting our home country, like our parents' culture and other things, that we can accept every part of our identity together and just talk about it. And that was a game changer for me. Every country had different influences and different, well, positive and negative influences that it just made me who I am. And I'm still, I mean, I can't really say I know who I am, even after all this. And I don't think I will be. And I think I'm just starting to accept that. Which,
I think it definitely hopefully is this evolving process, like Shaylee says, of like you just find new things about yourself, and it's not black and white, and it's not, you find new things all the time, and
you just develop it.
Exactly, you keep developing yourself. I think that's the healthy process, because like defining yourself is also very limiting. Like you should not, like there shouldn't be just one thing of yourself, or like one identity or whatever. I think definitely you can add things all the time, and you find new things, and you like new things or hate other things. And like how I hate matcha, and it's just
don't disrespect my
hint, Shaylee, hint. I mean, I definitely felt the same thing like Sarah, of how I kind of started understanding my identity when I left home, like when I left my parents and moved away somewhere else, and was alone and started meeting other people from other cultures, and started like widening my perspectives and views of things, because, well, being a Turkish a child who Turkish immigrants living in Sweden, I think a lot of people have struggled a lot with their own identity and their cultural identity, a lot of having one cultural or heritage or identity, whatever, in their home, and then going outside and having an entire different one, because especially like Swedish and Turkish culture is insanely, like, they're incredibly different. So I think that gives a bigger challenge, definitely. So when I was younger, I struggled a lot. I think a lot of people did. I know my sisters did, of not knowing where to fit in, or even know how to fit in, really. Feeling like they had to give up one part to be able to fit into the other. Not knowing, because you need to kind of fit into Swedish culture as well, like Swedish society. We go to school, we have friends, we have teachers, we live in this world, in this society where it works in a certain way. But then when you go home with your parents, there's an entire different culture and language, and it was a lot of struggle. So I think it was definitely that, like, when I left home, did I start to appreciate things about my own about the Turkish culture and heritage, but I had to actually leave the home to do that because I think it was not oppressive, but I think it was more like, oh, I have to. My parents are Turkish. I need to be connected to Turkish or Turkish culture and Turkish people. So I think because it was more forced, not by my parents, but it was always there because they're Turkish. Of course, it's always going to be there for them a lot more naturally than it was for me and my sisters. I'm talking for them, but I think they can agree. And so yeah, I think I definitely had to leave the nest, if you will, and start to see things by myself, not having to hear from others or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I always lived in Sweden. For a short time, I lived in Istanbul for the internship, and that was entirely different. That city messed me up. No, it was even more different than Stockholm. So like it was like a metropolitan city, and it was just insane city. And Istanbul is a lot more different than other cities in Turkey. Like it's not even similar to the other cities. So it was also definitely a very different experience of seeing how modern that city was as well. I mean, usually that's the thing as well. Like I don't always like that word because it's usually connected to like westernization, and then it's like equal to modernization or whatever.
The first world, third world country kind of thing.
Exactly. And it's crazy that it's such a shift within the same country. Like Istanbul is so known, at least the center of Istanbul is very known for being this modern, very westernized city, but then go half an hour out of this center is still Istanbul, and it's like so rural, and like there's farms and stuff. So they really focus on this one central place. And then every other place in Turkey, like it's not like that at all. Yeah, but it was very much more modern, even than the Turkish people here in Sweden. Like we're a lot more stuck to our culture, and we've talked about this as well, and how it's a lot more frozen in time with immigration, and they took their culture with them during a specific time period, and it's still pretty much stuck during that time period. Like it hasn't evolved a lot, usually because they're worried that they're gonna lose their culture and stuff, so it's a lot more easier to keep it as it was. But in Istanbul, oh my god, it was crazy to me. Like I came from the Turkish culture that's here in Sweden, and I'm supposed to be the modern one, but I was like, oh my god, what's happening? Like everyone, like it was
You're a country pumpkin.
Yeah, I really felt. I was like, where? They were like, where are you from? Like Stockholm. But still, like it was like I was from a rural village or something. But it's but yeah, it was very different. Istanbul was very different. But it was a beautiful experience, of course. But too many people for me in one place.
I mean,
too many people.
Getting used to Scotland and then going there.
Oh my god, it was the worst. I almost cried. Like in the metro, it was always so many people. Like there were always like at least 10 people touching me, and it was not like inappropriate touching. It was just like there was no space. Like I had to breathe their air, and it was horrible.
I know. I had a panic attack when I was in Melbourne for the first time. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just shocked, I think, for like a second. I was like, oh,
well, that's the
there's
thing.
Too many people. Yeah. I was like, oh my god, this is just Korea. That was like my mind, but I was like, I did not prepare for this. Yeah. And my brain was like, I need to go somewhere. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just gonna walk away from these people. There's too many.
But it's not like you can't, because there are always so many people everywhere. Like going like in Istanbul, go to an alley. You're like, oh, it's probably fewer. No, still as many people. They're everywhere. Which I mean makes sense. It's almost like 20 million population in Istanbul. It's more than the entirety of Sweden.
So many.
Like double. It's 10 people in Sweden.
Yeah, 10 million. In Sweden. Jesus. Thank you for joining us for the CulturWe podcast. Join us Thursdays for new episodes, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at CulturWe.